Radio 2000 nationwide.
Africa Talks with Dr. Mohau.
Hello, Africa. Tonight, we're going to be talking about women who are going to be speaking about regional integration from protocols to action, looking at a whole range of issues about how women are speaking truth to power within SADC, what they've been able to achieve in terms of gender equality, and some of the issues that are burning on the SADC region, and whether heads of states are going to be able to move and sign a protocol on gender.
We feel happy, and I want to believe that every woman in our region of SADC is happy today that our heads of states have signed, they have assented their signatures to the document. So it means that we have, this whole thing has brought us together. Even those countries that were not sure whether they should sign or not, it will help them to accelerate the empowering of their women.
Miss Jana too. I was sending SMSs to Pema, going back, celebrate. She's like, no, the ladies left. I'm like, the protocol is being signed right now.
SADC leaders agreed to 28 legally binding targets for achieving gender equality by 2015.
This is a victory. This is a success for the SADC region, and I must say that it is a milestone. It is a milestone that we all have to celebrate, and it is something that, as gender activists, we can cling on to really concretize, our efforts towards the empowerment of women.
It's hugely exciting. It's the only one of its kind in the world. It's an omnibus. It's all-encompassing. It tries to take on board all the existing international regional commitments into one instrument. So you can say, if I've done all of this for the SADC Protocol, I've done it all.
There had been a lot of informal networking and collaboration between women in particular and women's organizations in different SADC countries, where academics would meet in conferences. We met in Nairobi in 1985, then we did the Copenhagen's, we went to, of course, the big conference, Beijing, in 1995.
We had a very strong influence at that conference. One of the critical areas that the civil society worked on is saying that we need to institutionalize the gender agenda within SADC. And we pushed one with negotiations with the SADC Secretariat and government to have a gender unit within SADC. We successfully did that in 1997. We pushed for a declaration, and which we also managed to advocate for, and had the SADC Gender Development Declaration signed by our head of states.
The 1997 declaration had only one specific target: 30% representation of women in political and decision-making positions by 2005. Following a review of progress made, lobby groups came together as the South African Gender Protocol Alliance to demand an all-encompassing and binding instrument. The alliance has over 40 members.
The first thing we did was to elevate the declaration to a protocol, making it a binding legal document. Because of we have seen with the declaration that many of the countries have not met the 30% of SADC declaration. What can you do? Because it was not binding.
That target had already passed, and Summit felt that it was time to move on, and therefore to also increase the target from 30% to 50%, and also to respond to other needs that are not included in the SADC Declaration on Gender and Development, such as globalization, human trafficking, HIV and AIDS.
There have been about 8 or 9 different drafts of the protocol, and civil society has been there side by side with governments doing a lot of the drafting. when language was watered down, thrown out. We've been there to try and bring it back in. Many of our groups have been fortunate enough to be accredited with their governments as part of the official delegations. That's quite rare in SADC. SADC is not well known for allowing civil society groups to actually infiltrate their ranks. But because of the skills and expertise and persistence, all the women's ministries in this region recognize the importance and value of working with civil society. We really have been able to be there on the ground floor. So this is seen as a model, I think, in terms of relations between civil society and intergovernmental organizations in the SADC region.
What is sure and what is recognized by the governments, by the Secretariat, is the critical role and the intimate engagement of this process by the civil society and the women's movement in this region. You were right there right from the beginning, and I think that recognition is there.
The struggle is not yet over. Botswana, Madagascar, Malawi and Mauritius had reservations and did not sign the protocol at the time of its adoption. Madagascar signed shortly after. Malawi was expected to follow suit. Botswana and Mauritius are grappling with internal challenges.
There were a lot of obstacles in the way, and some of them I found very personally frustrating and challenging because of the position that my own country took. And I was not able to persuade my government, for example, to support the protocol in an enthusiastic fashion. And the reason it wasn't adopted the first time in Zambia, I think it was last year or the year before, is because there were hesitations from countries like Botswana, because we felt that the protocol language was too mandatory, for us to adopt, because that would mean that we would have to deliver according to certain timelines.
The Prime Minister said at the last conference in SADC that Mauritius is going to study. In fact, he asked me to put up a committee at the level of my ministry to study it in depth, because it can be contrary to our constitution if we have a quota. But in fact, what we are trying to do at the different levels is trying to push in a certain way where the different walls, but we have pulled down all the walls that stop women from progressing at the different strata of society.
This is not the first legal instrument to be adopted by our heads of state, but I think its significance lies in the fact that what the member states are committing to is more a targeted and very clear roadmap towards achieving gender equality. There are basically 8 key issues being covered in the protocol.
Many women live a kind of dual life, and as we know, customary law governs the lives of many women.
Women had access on productive resources, but there were no legal provisions which supported them to control those resources until in 2006, when the legal capacity of married persons was enacted. It was only then that I could go to the bank and get a loan without the consent of my husband. Before then, I would not even be promoted into a position of a director without the consent of my husband.
The protocol requires that all countries endeavor to include gender equality in their constitutions, repeal all discriminatory laws, and abolish the minority status of women.
I think the fact that there is now a target that by 2015, gender equality must be part of our constitutions, it's very, very significant, because that's the source of our rights and freedoms.
Women are still not where the decisions are made.
Governments must attempt to ensure that women are equally represented in all areas of decision-making and peace-building by 2015.
If you can look into our constitution, it's still dealing with a 30%, which SADC has actually moved away from. SADC is now saying, like, it's actually conforming to the AU, which is calling for a 50. When you say 50%, I'm looking at all structures. It shouldn't be only parliament, you know. We have got our traditional structures, which I think should also comply with the 50%.
Ha re ka sutisa molao re na le bonnete ba hore manane ya tla dula ntse le hona mo re tla ithuta he ka moso ha nako entse ya hore na ho etsahalang haholo di-counseling tsane tse ba batona ba qothisana le hlokwa le ba batshehadi mona mo ba qothisana le hlokwa ba le bang teng ha re sana taba teng re sebeditse e fedile ba ne ba hana ba ngola ba re ke be ga ema mona ntle le gore le kenye bontate.
You have elections in 2010, and here they have only 2 women as councillors on 24 persons, which is really, really bad. They didn't realize themselves until we had this workshop with them, and then they realized that something can be done, and they want to do something. So we'll know by 2010 if really they are working hard at it.
Dans sa protocole-là, il est lancé access to IT, ça veut dire le computer.
The women are the majority of the unemployed, the dispossessed, those in the informal sector, in the survivalist sector.
We think it's achievable in the sense that we have to mount a lot of programs, which we have already started, in ensuring that we empower women with regards to education and the importance of knowing that they hold the power to determine really realization of the target.
To educate a woman is to educate a nation. And we can ask ourselves, what does gender have to do with growth and development? It's something that we think about a lot at the World Bank. You can't exclude more than 50% of the world's population. By excluding women, you're excluding half the productive and economically active population. We know that research from around the world has shown that gender inequality tends to slow economic growth, and it makes the rise from poverty more difficult.
The protocol guarantees equal access to all forms of education and requires that educational institutions challenge gender stereotypes and gender violence. 7 of the protocol targets concern women's equal access to property, credit, employment, public procurement, and economic decision-making.
So when we take the subject abused, it is a very broad subject. We can talk about sexual abuse. We can talk about physical abuse.
Whenever the mother and the father is fighting, maybe the kid wants to help their mother. In that way, they are pushed away or hit.
Gender-based violence in Lesotho is very common. Most women are being assaulted by men. Most women are being raped by men. I mean, their husbands, yes. I think this is happening because men are still reluctant to accept women as equal partners.
Here in Botswana, the shelter movement started in 1998, and mainly in response to the gender-based violence that women and children experience. Problems range from sexual abuse, marital disputes, and so on and so forth.
Governments must now work to halve current levels of gender violence by 2015. They must also reduce the rate of HIV infections and provide universal access to treatment.
When we look at HIV and AIDS and gender, I mean, gender-based violence, we can't talk about them apart. They go hand in hand. Because mostly, gender-based violence, especially rape, sexual violence, let me put it that way. If you are forced if sexual encounter takes place under forced circumstances, then it means you're not in a position to negotiate condom use.
In most of the SADC countries, HIV/AIDS is sexually transmitted. Mauritius has a different challenge.
Most of the HIV positive is from drugs, only from drugs. That's why we come for the needle exchange, because they don't have money to buy their needle. So they say sharing, sharing. That's why you have got anything. That's why we come on the project of exchange needle. I give you one, you give me. You return back, and I will give you. So don't share it with others.
Women are also caretakers. They take care of the sick, their children, relatives, husbands, name them. It affects them more than the men.
My name is Dokas Ndwande. I'm from Mbatisa Home-Based Care, a community-based organization which works out in the rural areas, providing palliative care to chronically sick people.
The care workers in the communities, they are not paid for it, and yet they are the ones who are doing who are taking care of the sick at home. And you would find that a care worker is taking care of 20 people who are sick. So going from each homestead in the communities, they have to go. There's no transport and there are no clinics. In most cases, you find that it's a woman or a girl child. Some of the children, especially the girls, they drop out of school because they will find that both parents are dead, and she has to take care of the siblings at home.
The protocol recognizes care work. Governments must allocate resources and provide psychological support for those who care for people living with HIV and AIDS.
In 2000, when we amalgamated the 9 municipalities, I was elected as the Speaker of Ekurhuleni. The only thing that I saw in the news was about this beautiful lady, this smiling lady, this what and what and what, as if it was a beauty pageant, And I got so angry, I managed to talk to some people that I knew, and they will say, you must start taking women very serious. We're not there because we want to display how beautiful we are, but we're there because we want to improve the lives of our people, and that's how we need to be portrayed.
My experience with the media is most of the time the women's voices are never heard. Women's news is no news, and most of the time the stories you hear about women, whether they are in leadership, in cabinet, or the women out there, it is the negative stories. It is about the scandals. It is about how they don't have leadership, how they are failing to deliver. You don't have about the work, the good work that they are doing every day.
This article gives hope to thousands of girls, not only in Tanzania, but Africa and the world at large. The article challenges the gender stereotype that girls cannot venture into the sciences. Bestina Magutu, Tanzania.
Governments must strive to ensure that there is universal access to information and communication technologies. The media is urged to give equal voice and representation to women and men, as well as to challenge gender stereotypes.
Where we will be successful is that if we are able to say, well, look here, gender equality, issues of violence, issues of HIV, and covering these things properly are in themselves intrinsically linked to issues of media freedom, then I think that then we're going to be seeing quite a strong civil society and media coordinated response to government's initiatives.
In these last 2.5 days, while everyone was speculating on whether or not the protocol would be signed, we were planning for what to do on Monday morning if it is signed. So we have a 27-page action plan. What it will assist us in doing, obviously, is coordinating and focusing our work much better and giving us much more clout at the national level. So we will be able now to go to our governments in whatever sector it is we work in and say, look, this is what is in the protocol.
I think financing gender equality issues is a big area of concern for the women's movement in the region. We've found that even though you've got policies in place and you've got programs that are running, etc., and you've actually got structures in all the different SADC countries that are meant to address gender mainstreaming, capacity is a huge challenge. And part of the capacity constraints have to do with resources.
Many organizations, national women's rights organizations, women law organizations, women in media organizations, are already working on these issues. What the SADC Protocol Alliance provides is an umbrella to collectively strengthen all of that work. And actually, in a way, we discuss similar rollout plans so that when we're going back into each country, we're kind of working systematically in the same way. What the Alliance can do is provide a kind of roadmap, a strategy that's not developed by one institution, but all of us in the Alliance together. So one message, one voice.
We are trying to examine the extent to which the church either promotes or undermines the role of women. And in all this, we are trying to ensure that since women are the majority, they should still hold higher positions within the church. You find that they are mostly doing small services like cleaning the church, like going to visit the sick, and they are not necessarily in the decision-making structures.
And in the other churches, they don't allow women, and they keep on quoting from the Bible, out of context. What we are trying to do is to make sure that there's relearning in the church, so that we can interpret the Bible to be more friendly to the women.
What the protocol is doing is opening up new avenues and new ways of thinking, which the ordinary woman on the street will very much identify with. It sort of creates a vision of how this region can respond effectively to addressing some of the challenges that are experienced by ordinary men and women.
Bannawe.